I'm Diana Robertson, and I'm the current president of the Gibsons Heritage Society. Also very interested in arts, culture, and heritage, and therefore love the idea of being involved with the Heritage Playhouse, which is operated by the Society. And just a couple of points about the history of this building. A lot of people don't know it was actually built in 1929. It was called the Women's Institute Hall, and it was built for $2,000. And throughout the 1930s, it was heavily used during the Depression as the only entertainment venue in the town of Gibsons. After that, in the 1940s, it laid fallow for a while and was eventually taken over by School District 46, and they turned it into a warehouse, and they had basketball games in here. It certainly didn't look like what you see now. That transformation didn't happen until the late 80s and the 1990s. And in 1998, I believe, it was formally designated as a heritage building, one of 3 that we have in Gibsons. So it's had a very interesting history, and it's just so wonderful to see the performances that go on here on a regular basis and continue today.
It's a beautiful facility. The tech has developed, the sound equipment and the light equipment has developed over the years. And it's really a great place now with the new lights and the new soundboard and everything. My wife and I have been involved with the Heritage Playhouse. She's done some of the sculptures out in the foyer. She has sung here with some groups. I mean, I've lived in Gibsons for 50 years. Fred Ingalls I think Fred was even a student at Elphinstone when I first started teaching there. Fred, who was the main designer and builder of the Playhouse.
Initially, I was president of the Heritage Society when it was first created. There came a time when we became aware that this building, in its original state, which was just a big old hall like Roberts Creek Hall, was in jeopardy of being demolished. Our action had to save the building, one way or another. We were just a bunch of amateurs. It was not something we had any idea of how to do, and yet we didn't really have an option. So the idea I came up with of creating a live performance theater, because I've been trying to do that for a long time.
Fred Ingalls came into my kitchen and told me that this building was going to be redundant, going to be maybe torn down. It had been the Women's Institute Hall in the 20s, and what did I think about it being a theatre? And so I opened my mouth and said, "Oh wow," or words to that effect, and little did I know that I would be involved for a long, long time.
Because of that, I had to come up with a design, because we weren't in a position to hire anybody. So I drafted the design to convert this space into a theater. And to get there, it couldn't have been done without Diane being the pivot point for raising all the money.
It was just such a huge old barn of a place. And there was a big pit in the middle of the floor, remember that?
Yeah, the school district had it just prior to us, and it was their maintenance building.
There were machines and ducts and a grease pit where the stage is now, with double doors so that trucks could be brought in and do whatever they do to trucks. There was a welding shop in one corner where the stage is. You can imagine what it was like.
When we came here, there were huge holes in the floor. They cut a big hole in the wall, drove the trucks up a ramp, and so they had a pit to work. They can get underneath the trucks and stuff. It went down into the crawl space. And then on the outside, we uncovered 2 huge diesel tanks. So it was in pretty rough shape. The walls were so out of plumb, just because of the way it was built and by a bunch of volunteers way back when.
So it just seemed like we needed to get money right away. So the first thing I did was to write that grant for funding from the Heritage Trust. That was pretty dramatic. we somehow missed the courier when it was due that day. So I just kind of jumped in my car and I went to Victoria, like right away. I mean, it was crazy.
We managed to get the Heritage Grant.
Yeah, so we got it was nice, it was quite a good grant.
At the same time, CBC was finishing up with beachcombers, and we were very, very fortunate. CBC was so kind. I don't know what the main people in CBC knew, but the people that were here were wonderful. They gave us a lighting grid and all sorts of lights. We got all kinds of stuff from them. And amongst this was all the odds and ends of paint that they had. We mixed it all together. Fred had one of those drill things that you mix large amounts of paint with, and it was called Mung. We painted it all this rather disgusting grey colour, and we borrowed from GBS a lot of pallets, and we built risers. The school lent us seats, and we put on our first play. Steel Magnolias was the first one. At that time, the staging area was this side, and the audience was the other side.
That was the first play in this building, but it was before the building looked like this. Everything was pretty much topsy-turvy. The seating went on the other side. The stage was where we're sitting.
And the fun part too was a friend of ours, the wonderful Wally Dempster, was the chief at the time, and my husband's on the fire department as well. And with their permission, we were allowed to have the play, but we had to have 2 firefighters every night and a fire truck parked out front.
Yeah.
We didn't meet fire code. So we got around that by the fire department actually stationing a truck outside on North Road and the firemen being in the building while the play was happening. So that got us around that.
We brought our
original
scripts.
scripts.
Yeah.
We have these, and I mean, we were both just going on about
Just
like the
the
amount
notes
of
that we
notes
took.
and the blocking and the
know,
motivation for every word, all the different lines
Yeah.
of all the different intonations and when it changed and you went from this to that, and unbelievable. And then
It
the
was-
original, you know, with the program.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just fun. And then all the actors and the other thing that's really fun is looking back and remembering all these people. Oh right, oh yeah, because we haven't, you know, it's a while back, and this was in '91.
Yeah.
So it was 9 years before the theater officially opened. So it's really fun, and I feel very fortunate to be, you know, a part of all this theater. Totally blessed.
So appreciative, especially after my very first, because I never acted before or since, at Gibsons Elementary in the gym, basically. So he had it, the audience was kind of on risers. The chairs were
they went
up.
straight up to the ceiling.
They went right up. So I don't know how many seats we managed to sell for those performances, but people loved it.
Yes, so we did Steel Magnolias first, and then not too long afterwards, we did an Alan Ayckbourn play, Living Together, and that was fun. That was good, but then we couldn't do any more. The building inspector stepped in.
We could have been celebrating our 35th anniversary this year, not our 25th, due to the fact that the building inspector from the town of Gibsons was, he said that this was a theatre and therefore was classed as, I don't know, something A, let's say, I have no idea. And therefore we could put no more plays or anything on, and so that was the end of performances here.
That was that. So that's when, Nest and Colleen kept going through all of that.
Yeah, for 8 years.
Yeah, I mean, that
It
was,
was quite sad, but it was just the
yeah.
reality. And finally, Nest and Colleen were able to get the project restarted and have it finally finished.
The yard was full of brambles. Yeah, it was a mess for a very long time and very disheartening. But eventually, the millennium came along. And with the millennium came grants. That just saved us. Got this great big check. And then the community by that time was wonderful. They were just so kind and giving.
Nest and Colleen Elson went tirelessly around the community trying to raise the money, and eventually the credit union agreed to fund the lion's share of it, and part of the process was to keep it in its heritage state. Nest and Colleen were adamant that we did that as, to preserve as much of it as we could. And so that's why we left down the corridors and things. You can see all the exposed posts and beams and stuff. And when we tore out the ceiling, we realized when we were in the attic, the whole entire roof system was rocking back and forth. And so we had to employ an engineer to come and figure out what to do about that. And that's how we came up with this very strange looking ceiling, which he called a sawtooth ceiling. And most people don't notice, but the angled side of the ceiling, it's hard to see, it's all black, but it's all been carpeted. We had carpet glued to it. For live theater, you want the sound, lots of reverb, but for music, you want the opposite. You don't want sound reverberating off of hard surfaces. So we had to strike a balance between the two, and I think it worked out really well. It's the sound in here for both types of performances worked out very well.
So Nest had got the seats from the Starlight Theatre on Denman Street in Vancouver. I don't know where she stored them, but she stored them until because she got them fairly early on in the process.
Right.
And she was able to keep them together until they could be reupholstered during the complete renovation work. So, yeah, and here they are. So, and they're still in great shape. It's a pretty small building to put 146 seats in, and have a lobby, and have a concession, and have a stage.
And a green room.
And a green room. And it just, it's shoehorned them in there.
Yeah,
It works.
it is remarkable.
Nest and Colleen were kind enough to invite me back to cut the ribbon. And I was just so happy that it finally become a real thing. Finally, it was going to be useful to the community.
Yeah, people loved it. And now it's just busy all the time.
It's nice to have this venue for our community. Seeing my children grow up, and between dance and piano and saxophones and performances, seeing them utilize the theater.
Me too. I had a granddaughter doing dance
Yeah.
recitals here.
And it was
Just ongoing.
and you really felt like, I don't know, even more special because you felt like you owned a piece of it, and you knew where they were backstage and in the green room and how it all worked and where they stood in the wings, and there's just that little added piece to it. So it's nice to have that attachment for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
I hope that people in the community appreciate that this is a heritage building, because I don't think a lot of people know that it dates back as far as it does, and that it's been a stalwart for arts and culture for almost 100 years. I would hope that people realize when they come in, just by looking at the architecture and looking at the great old seats from Vancouver, that they can see that there's a lot of heritage character in here. It's certainly not fabricated heritage, it's the real thing. And I think that does make a difference to people's appreciation of the venue. Even though it has some quirks, we do try to maintain it technically, and it has great acoustics. So I do think that people enjoy coming here. It's very intimate theater, and people talk about it being a community gathering place, which is wonderful.